and welcome back to Dear Jordan. I think one of the greatest misconceptions about healing is that one day you simply arrive. That after enough time has passed, after enough tears have been shed, after enough prayers have been prayed, you'll finally wake up and discover you've healed. I used to believe that. What I've come to realize is that healing isn't something we finish. It's something we continue walking through. And sometimes the very thing we think will come after healing is actually what God uses to continue it. Today's letter is about something I never expected. It's about what happened when I finally allowed someone into my life after years of believing I needed to have everything figured out first. It's about the surprising ways God continued healing my heart, not through perfection, but through safety. So if you're able, grab yourself a cup of coffee and let's listen in. Dear Jordan, for a long time, I misunderstood what healing actually looked like. Throughout my life, I was never really the relationship type. I've shared before that I avoided relationships because I thought if I ever got too attached, I would never have to experience the pain that came when they ended. If I never fully opened my heart, then no one can truly break it. That avoidance made me inexperienced. It made me naive, and ironically, it didn't protect me from pain at all. It actually left me more vulnerable to it. Then I spent years in an unhealthy relationship, and when it finally ended, I convinced myself that healing meant becoming someone who could never be hurt again. My definition of healing became this version of me that could go about life as if none of it ever happened. If I could control my emotions, if I could keep moving forward, if I could stop crying, if I could function, then I must be healed. Now, don't misunderstand me. I absolutely believe there's a place for learning to regulate your emotions. Emotional regulation is healthy. It allows us to experience our emotions without letting them control our lives. But when we're not guided through that process correctly, emotional regulation can quietly become emotional suppression. Instead of learning how to process our emotions, we simply stop allowing ourselves to feel them. And I think that's where I found myself. So after leaving one of the most traumatic relationships of my life, I decided I wasn't going to date anyone until I was quote unquote healed. I spent the next 5 years avoiding romantic relationships because I genuinely believed it would be unfair to invite someone into my life while I was still carrying so much brokenness. So I settled. I settled for friendships. I settled for situationships. I convinced myself that if I could have enough connections to keep loneliness away, but not enough commitment to risk heartbreak, that would be enough. And honestly, for a while it was. Then it wasn't. Your brothers started noticing that I had become very comfortable being alone, especially on the weeks you were all at your father's house. One of your brothers finally challenged me. Actually, challenge might be too nice of a word. He made a bet with me. His challenge was simple. I had until my birthday to go on a date. Naturally, we put money on it because apparently my children think financial incentives are the way to motivate me. The funny part is I was completely confident when I accepted the bet. I thought, of course, I can go on a date before June. Then January came, nothing. February came, still nothing. March came, and I still hadn't made any effort whatsoever. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't really want to. Dating felt exhausting before it even began. Eventually, somewhere in the middle of March, I decided it was probably time to at least reactivate my dating profile. Working from home while raising 4 children doesn't exactly create endless opportunities to meet people. And if I'm being honest, I'm an introvert. Meeting new people drains me. Dating apps allowed me to take things one person at a time, slowly, intentionally, very differently than I had in the past. Years earlier, I had dated almost frantically, not because I was looking for love, because I was trying to escape what was waiting for me outside my own front door. This time was different. I wasn't running anymore. I wasn't looking for someone to rescue me. I simply thought maybe, just maybe, I was finally healed enough to let someone into my life. Little did I know, God was about to teach me that healing doesn't end when love begins. Sometimes that's exactly where another layer of healing starts. So of course, my first attempts at dating didn't exactly go as planned. The first date never happened. We had planned to meet halfway since we lived a couple of hours apart. Everything was arranged until life interrupted my plans. Just days before that date, my best friend passed away. I remember looking at my calendar and thinking, how could I possibly sit across from someone and try to get to know them when all I wanted was to grieve? The answer was simple. I couldn't. So instead of going on a date with a stranger, I went on a date with the 4 people who have always mattered most. You and your brothers. We went to Chili's, and somewhere between our conversation, you said something that completely shifted my perspective. You looked at me and said, "Mommy, if someone wants to date you, they should be willing to come to you." I smiled because honestly, you were right. Your brothers quickly agreed. And just like that, my children had raised my standards. Sometimes wisdom comes from the people you least expect. Not long after that, another date came along. This time, he agreed to come to me. Now, let me just say this. Someone coming to you doesn't automatically make them a good person. Healthy standards don't eliminate unhealthy people. They simply help reveal them sooner. Almost immediately, it became obvious that his expectations for the evening were very different from mine. He wasn't looking to know me. He was looking for something from me. Today, I can see that clearly. Back then, I couldn't, or maybe I didn't want to. Because healing isn't this magical moment where you suddenly realize every red flag you've ever missed. Sometimes you're still learning. Sometimes your discernment is growing one experience at a time. So despite the discomfort I felt, I convinced myself maybe I had judged him too quickly. Maybe I should give him another chance. And I did. And the second date confirmed everything the first one had already tried to tell me. He hadn't changed. The only thing that changed was that I finally believed what I was seeing. One of the hardest parts of healing is accepting that people often show us who they are much earlier than we're willing to believe them. Not because we're foolish, but because hope has a way of arguing with evidence. I think many of us desperately want people to become who we've imagined they could be, instead of accepting who they're choosing to show us they are. That was another lesson I needed to learn before I was truly ready for what God had next. Then came the person I believe God had next for me. And he came with flowers, literal flowers. He also came to me, not because I demanded it, not because he was trying to impress me. He simply honored the standard that had quietly been established. He didn't show up in a tailored suit trying to sell me a version of himself. He came as himself, a neatly pressed polo shirt, a warm smile, and what immediately stood out to me wasn't what he was wearing. It was the genuine interest he took in me. We had already spent hours talking before our first date, so I wondered if we would eventually run out of things to say. We didn't. Hours passed as if time had forgotten about us. But something else happened that day, something I never expected. The more safe I felt, the more emotional I became. It didn't make sense to me. This was supposed to be the easy part. I had spent years believing I needed to become completely healed before I let someone into my life. Instead, I found myself sitting across from someone who showed me simple acts of kindness, and suddenly I was fighting back tears. He would ask a thoughtful question, and I'd cry. He would say something that communicated genuine concern for my well-being, and I cried. He would notice something small about me that made me feel seen, and I'd cry. It wasn't because he had done something extraordinary. It was because something ordinary had become so unfamiliar. I realized I had become so accustomed to surviving that simple kindness felt overwhelming. Psychologists often describe how our nervous system can stay in survival mode long before the danger has passed. We become so focused on protecting ourselves that we don't always recognize how much we've been carrying. Then, when we finally experience safety, our nervous system begins to loosen its grip. Sometimes that's when the tears come. not because we're falling apart, but because we're finally safe enough to stop holding ourselves together. I had spent years convincing myself I was healed because I had learned how to function. God gently showed me that there was a difference between functioning and healing. That day, I didn't feel broken. I felt seen. I felt cared for. I felt safe. And instead of exposing my weakness, that safety exposed the places in my heart that God was still healing. Looking back now, I don't believe those tears were a sign that I wasn't ready for a healthy relationship. I think they were evidence that I had finally found a place where my heart no longer had to pretend it was okay. To this day, I still cry, probably more than I ever have before. The difference is I no longer see my tears as evidence that I'm falling apart. I see them as evidence that something inside of me is finally being acknowledged. For years, I thought strength meant keeping everything together. Now I think strength sometimes looks like allowing yourself to fall apart in a safe enough place that God can put you back together differently. So when the tears come now, I don't think, what's wrong with me? I think, what is this trying to teach me? What part of my story is asking to be seen? What belief am I still carrying? What wound has finally become safe enough to reveal itself? With every conversation, with every moment of kindness, with every difficult discussion, another layer seems to come to the surface. And instead of feeling defeated by that, I find myself feeling hopeful. Because every layer I acknowledge is another layer I no longer have to carry alone. I don't believe healing is about reaching a place where nothing ever affects you again. I think it's about becoming emotionally healthy enough to recognize what's happening inside of you and having the courage to walk through it instead of around it. James writes that we should consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I don't think James was saying the trials themselves are enjoyable. I think he was reminding us that God has a way of producing something beautiful through the very things we'd rather avoid. Maybe that's what he's been doing in me. Every tear has become an invitation, not to stay wounded, but to become more whole. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts a safe relationship can offer. Not that another person heals you, only God can truly transform the heart. But sometimes he lovingly uses safe people to create an environment where healing no longer has to hide. That's what this journey has been for me. Not becoming weaker, but becoming safe enough to be fully known, even by myself. Jordan, for the longest time, I believed healing was a destination. I thought one day I would wake up and all the hurt would be gone. That I would never cry over the past again. That I would never feel anxious, uncertain, or vulnerable. I don't believe that anymore. I think healing is a relationship. It's a relationship with God where he faithfully reveals one layer of our hearts at a time, never more than we're ready to carry with him. And sometimes he allows safe people to walk alongside us while he does the work. If one day you find yourself in a healthy relationship and old emotions begin to surface, don't immediately assume you've chosen the wrong person. Before you run, ask yourself a different question. Is this relationship hurting me, or is it revealing parts of me that have been hurting all along? There is an important difference. The right people won't be intimidated by your tears. They won't shame you for needing reassurance. They won't make you feel like you're quote-unquote too much. They'll create a space for honesty. They'll extend grace while you continue growing. And they'll remind you by the way they love you that you don't have to earn kindness. Most importantly, I hope you always remember that no relationship, no matter how healthy, can take the place of the one who created you. People are gifts. God is the source. The healthiest relationships point you back to him, not away from him. So don't chase perfection. Don't wait until you think you've healed every wound before allowing yourself to be loved. Just keep bringing your heart to God. Let Him shape it. Let Him soften it. Let Him strengthen it. Because healing isn't becoming someone who never cries again. Healing is becoming someone who no longer has to hide those tears. And one day, I pray you experience the kind of love that gives you the freedom to be fully known, fully loved, and continually transformed. Not because someone rescued you, but because God met you there. I say this with all the love I am still learning how to give. Your mom. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Dear Jordan. If there's one thing I hope you take away from today's letter, it's this. Healing doesn't stop when healthy love begins. Sometimes that's exactly where another layer of our healing starts. So if you found yourself in a safe relationship and emotions you thought were long gone suddenly begin to surface, don't automatically assume you're moving backward. Maybe your heart has simply found a place where it finally feels safe enough to tell the truth. As always, I encourage you to take what resonates, bring it before God, and give yourself permission to grow one layer at a time. Healing is rarely linear, but every step toward honesty is a step toward freedom. If today's episode spoke to you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who may need the reminder that they don't have to have it all together before they're worthy of a healthy love. Thank you for allowing me to spend this time with you. Until next time, be gentle with yourself, keep healing, and remember, God isn't finished with your story yet. I'll see you in the next letter. This has been Dear Jordan, Letters to My Daughter.